Hey y'all, welcome to the Moving with Millennials podcast with your favorite millennial realtors.
We are 4 top producing agents in the DFW area, and we are ready to share the good, bad, and the real life of real estate.
Whether you're thinking about getting into real estate, already an agent, or just curious about what your agent really does, join us.
Tune in every Wednesday to see what it's really like to be on this side of the transaction.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Moving with Millennials. Since it is back to school time, we are going to do a fun episode of just real estate terminology, vocab. We're going to call this ABCs of real estate. So.
Yeah. First of all, I think we need to shout out all the teachers that are going back to school right now. Maggie probably knows.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Anytime I'd walk into a store in July and there'd be school supplies, I'd go the opposite way.
PTSD.
Yeah. Your stomach would just drop.
Yes, it's
that's so funny. Mine gets really excited. I'm like, ooh, I need all of the Post-its, but I don't.
You're such an organizer.
So that was fun, getting new supplies and setting up my classroom. But just having a full summer off of doing nothing and then going back, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I can't imagine leaving kids and going
I'm starting to do look through homeschool curriculum right now, so the back to school stuff is getting me so excited. I'm like, oh cool.
Yeah.
Stuff we can do for at home. She's just pre-K, but
Yeah,
for
sure.
I was just going to say a shout out to all the parents who are probably anxiously or nervously leaving their kiddos at school. Things are changed differently. Y'all know I had my little minor freak out moment for people listening. My daughter's school, obviously safety is very important, and so her classroom is kind of open to a couple other classrooms, so of course, Papa Bear had to jump out and ask, how is this going to be handled in an emergency?
Yeah.
So, so I think that's probably on a lot of parents' minds these days because it's just everything has been so fresh and it's happened so many times now. So, shout out to the parents that are probably a little nervous to leave their kiddos.
Yeah.
It's a lot of anxiety.
And the kindergarten parents. My friend was saying that his son, the second day of school, had to walk in by himself, and that was the hardest thing.
Because they don't let parents in.
The first day he could walk him in, and the second day they do regular drop off, and kindergartners have to find them.
They're such babies.
I was I couldn't do it. I would be I have to go.
Imagine us. COVID is when JC started school, so she did at-home learning for 6 weeks, and then the district went back, or 9 weeks, whatever it was. Then the district went back to regular learning, and we were never allowed in the building, not once, as parents.
Oh, wow.
So
you didn't even know
I still don't even know what our classroom in kindergarten looks like.
That's so heartbreaking, honestly.
So, they survived. Kids are far more resilient than adults
They
are.
really are.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Oh. Okay, let's jump into the ABCs. We actually have these in alphabetical order as well. So let's start with the first one, acceptance.
Yes. So go ahead.
Well, we'll give you guys the technical definition, then we'll talk about it a little bit more. So acceptance. So this is the date when both parties, seller and buyer, have agreed to and completed signing and or initialing the contract. So we also call this the execution or execution date.
Right.
So this is literally both parties, buyer, seller, have to sign everything, and that's the acceptance date and when everything's under contract.
And for either one, either the buyer or the seller, because sometimes the buyer can send an offer and then the sellers they sign everything last, or sometimes the seller will sign everything but make a change and it goes back to the buyers. Whichever party is the last one to sign, that agent then dates it, and that's considered the executed or acceptance date.
Yeah.
So sometimes getting the actual contract written, submitted, and then actually executed can sometimes take a day or two.
Right.
So actually the day that you wrote the contract may not be the day that it's executed.
Right.
For sure.
And that starts day 0 for all your other dates.
Right. Yeah.
And you'll always get a copy of the executed contract too, so your agent will send you that as soon, and that's what you should keep on file for your stuff.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right.
Okay, the next one is adjustable rate mortgage. The definition of this is a mortgage that permits the lender to adjust the mortgage's interest rate periodically on the basis of changes in a specified index. Interest rates may move up or down as market conditions change.
Yeah, so I think y'all are all surprised because I'm considering an adjustable rate on my condo, and it's just because we don't know what rates are going to do. So the one that I'm looking at would be set at today's current rate for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so if in that 10 years or 10 years from now, if they're lower, then it could go down. If it's higher, it could go up. But in the meantime, I could refinance to a set, to where it's not adjustable at any point. So if it looks like rates are going to continue climbing, I could always just refinance before it hits that 10-year mark, so I don't get stuck with something even higher.
Right. So the advantage of the ARM, which is the adjustable rate mortgage, is that it's technically lower, but then after the 10 years or whatever it is, it adjusts to whatever the current market is.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a risk because you don't know if it's going to be higher or lower. And that for mine, it would be 10 years, but sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. So that number can change drastically. The longer it is, the more of a gamble it is, kind of in a way.
We don't see a lot of these adjustable rate mortgages anymore because like 2009, 2008, like when the market crashed and everything else, that's when they had a lot of those ARMs. People were getting pre-qualified for like, a 2%, 3% rate, and they were like, oh yeah, I can qualify. Then like all of a sudden overnight,
in like 3 years or 5 years, it jumped up like 7.
Changed up to 7-8%, and that's a huge difference in their monthly payment, so they couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah. The only reason I'm not, my hesitation is that my lender was like, adjustable rates are really good for people if it's a longer term and you don't plan on being there forever.
Right.
And I don't plan on living in my condo forever, but I do anticipate owning it forever. Right. I wanted to own my first rental property. So
maybe
that's kind of one of those things.
Sooner or something with a lower rate. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I'll think about how that will work.
Is your current landlord going to sell you?
Yeah. So when it was originally listed to sell, and then I talked them into taking it off the market, did a 2-year lease, and I had first option to purchase at any point within the first 24 months, which actually insanely is coming up like next year.
Wow.
That is crazy. That's right.
Survived 2 years already. Almost. So a year and a half is what we're at right now. But so I have first right to purchase at any point within that 24 years or 24 months. And I already negotiated the sales price from a year and a half ago.
Wow.
Are you serious?
We negotiated all terms up front, and we pretty much already have it agreed to.
Like in writing? Stop it.
Yeah, and they will still pay my commission. They'll still use the listing agent and everything.
That is
amazing. You
awesome.
have to buy that thing.
Yeah.
How did you get them to do
Or I'll
that?
assume it for you.
I am quite persuasive.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Awesome. That's great.
Good job, Jake.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay.
Okay. So what's the next one? Amortized loan. So an amortized loan is a loan that is paid in equal installments during all of its term. So that's pretty much what most people have right now. It's going to be like, the base portion of your mortgage that you pay stays the same all through. So the portion that can change are just your taxes and your insurance. Those may go up from year to year, but the amount that you're paying towards your loan and towards your principal is all the same every month.
Yep.
Next is appraisal. So this is an estimate of real estate value, usually issued to standards of FHA, VA, and FHMA. Recent comparable sales in the neighborhood is the most important factor in determining value. This should be contrasted against the home inspection? Can't talk today, sorry. Didn't have enough coffee. This is important. So, but you never know either, like, what the appraisal is going to do.
Right.
So there's one person who does it, the appraiser, and he's a neutral party, and the lender hires him to do it.
I think appraisal is it's a subjective term because people use it like, oh, what's the appraisal of my home? Like as if wanting to know the value. And it's like, well, are you talking about market value, appraised value, like Brandie just said? That's that one appraiser's opinion. Or are you talking about tax
assessed value?
Yeah, assessed, which they call it assessed value as well. So that term appraise and appraisal gets kind of thrown around loosely of like, we mean it as the appraisal value, but what are you talking about? So definitely a difference. Okay, the next one is appreciation. I think we know what this one is, and probably a lot of buyers listening probably have heard this one get thrown around a lot. So this is an increase in the value of a property due to changes in the market conditions or other causes. The opposite of depreciation. So, of course, with the increase in prices recently and demand, definitely are seeing appreciation with the homes. Basically, home values are increasing, and we'll talk about equity here in a minute, but it's causing that appreciation. Yeah,
and I think like last year, prices appreciated like 17%.
It's crazy.
It's typically 3 to 4% year over year. It's like what's typical. But for 2 years or so, we saw like in the teens. Appreciation for 2 years. So
for sure.
Which is crazy that you got them to agree on a price.
Yes,
they didn't know it was going to be like
that.
You didn't really. Well, nobody really.
No one knew. But I was like, let's get this all.
Awesome.
But relatively, appreciation happens in a lot of, not just in real estate. So it's kind of like. Real estate's always going to appreciate, even if it depreciates for temporarily. It's going to go. Always comes back. Yeah, it comes back.
So the next one is closing disclosure. This is a financial statement containing the actual terms and costs of the purchase rendered to the buyer 3 days prior to closing day. So this must be sent to them 3 days prior to closing for you to close on time. So this just has all the terms, all of your numbers, what to expect, your final cash to close, all of that.
Yeah, and there's times where we're like emailing
where is it?
4 days
Where's the
before.
final CD?
Where's the CD? Is this coming out today? Are we ready to go? Like, hate that moment.
Right.
Like, we're not
it's
talking about
gotten so much better, I feel like, now, but when things were insanely busy, lenders were also insanely busy with refis and everything else. Like, I'm sure they were, like, stressed to get them out.
Yeah, so if you hear us freaking out about the CD, we're not talking about, like, music CDs.
Yeah.
What's that?
It can be stressful, because if you don't have it, like, I have to look at that, because there's mistakes can be made, and so,
for sure.
All right, comparable sales. So these are the sales that have similar characteristics as the subject property, the one that's listed for sale, and are used for analysis in the appraisal process. So we mostly refer to these as comps. So your agent, if you're thinking about selling your home, will likely pull the comps or the comparables before you even go on the market. They'll present these to you so that you guys can agree on a price to sell at. Similar, the buyer's agent, or whoever's going to buy the home, they'll also look at the comparable sales and they'll advise their client on how to make the offer. So we use them on both sides, really.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Contract. This is an agreement to do or not to do a certain thing. So
when you sign a contract, you're signing to do something or not to do something.
I can't remember. I feel like when you are getting your licensing, like when they do the classes, they explain that there is a contract not to do something, like that we do use that in real estate, but I can't remember what the example is.
Like in the contract there it says not to do something.
Yeah, or like one of the addendums is like to not do something. I can't remember.
Right. Well, the way I see it is like, if you sign a contract on the seller side, you cannot sell it to someone else.
Yes.
And you cannot. There's certain things you can't do.
Right.
Obviously at that point. Right.
Yeah. So most people only think of it as like a promise to do something, but it can be a promise not to do something else as well.
To not like rip everything out of the house, that kind of stuff. Before closing. Gosh. Okay, so the next one is contingency. We don't actually have a definition for this one, but a contingency is basically anything that needs to be done in order to complete the transaction. So it could be a contingency on the sale of another home, or it could be that you're contingent on obtaining financing. There's all sorts of contingencies throughout the contract that have to be completed or met in order for you to move forward with the contract. So.
And some of them are standard contingencies. Like most of the time, majority of contracts are homes are financed, so there is a financing contingency. So that's pretty much built in, And then some of them, like you said, like the sale of another home, that's kind of more of a special circumstance. So there's some standard ones and there's some kind of exceptions or special ones.
Yes, and with the market softening a little bit, we're seeing more contingent offers on the sale of other properties, which was not a thing the last 2 years.
Crazy.
Yeah, I've got two that
I did too.
have contingencies.
Yeah, and they're getting accepted.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
The next one is consideration, anything of value to induce another to enter into a contract, like money, services, a promise, etc.
Yep.
So the best way to explain this one too, with consideration, say you were going to extend your option period, there has to be some sort of consideration in return for you to do that extension. So putting down even as small as $1. I think we put down, our broker wants us to put as small as $10 down, just so there's a little more consideration for that action. So you have to put something down in order to get something in return.
Yeah, and your earnest money, which we'll talk about in a second, is like the basic form of consideration for the contract. So something important. All right, deed is a written instrument which, when properly executed and delivered, conveys title to real property. So real property is real estate. So that's how the deed is basically who owns the property. So when you close, it goes from the seller. The title company will process all that paperwork and get it into the buyer's name, and they send it over to the county and everything like that.
That's what
so it puts it all in your name.
Yep.
Perfect. Discount points. A loan fee charged by a lender of FHA, VA, or conventional loans to increase the yield on the investment. 1 point equals 1% of the loan amount.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of the discount points happening more often than we have in the past, just because the rates are a little bit higher. So people you can buy down, meaning you can be, and I think it's funny, some people are like, oh, I got points, and it's like they think of it as a good thing. And you're like, no, you are being charged points in order to get those points or percentage off of your loan. So it's really funny to me when they're like, oh, the lender said they're giving me points, and I'm like, cool, how much are you paying for those? What's their fee for those points?
I have a buyer that just did that. Like, they paid only $5,000 and got like a 4% interest rate.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so I'm like,
and
definitely
over
do
the
that.
life
It's
of
so
the
worth
loan,
it.
it makes a big difference.
It's
for
huge.
sure. Change their monthly payment.
I think the most important thing to do here, what I tell buyers, is try to find your break-even point. So if you're going to put in $5,000 to get it down to 4% instead of a 4.5%, how many payments do you need to make in order to make back that $5,000 you just spent on it? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense if you're going to go sell the house in 2 years and you paid up more up front. So there's got to be a break-even.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it my turn? Okay. Next one is easement. So this is the right to use the land of another. So on surveys, which I don't know if we have that on here, but basically you have easements. There's utility easements, basically saying that you have to give the utility companies access to those parts of your property when they need it. There's also easements that again, you have to use, maybe someone is allowed to drive on your land in order to get to their land because their property is what's called landlocked. So there's easements on a survey that you basically are sharing. You own it, but you have to share the rights with other peoples to be able to use it.
Yeah.
For sure. The next one is earnest money. We don't have a definition for this one, but this is an example of a consideration what we were talking about earlier. This is a promise. The buyer deposits this into their escrow account at the title company, and it's due within 3 days. Basically, this is their promise showing that they are serious to purchase the home. Right. Somewhere from 1% to 3%. It's all negotiable. You can put more down.
Yeah. Right. I on one of my listings, someone just put down 10% as their earnest.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Wow. Very expensive
but
listing.
The higher percentage means you're serious. The more serious you are, the higher earnest money is. So that's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right, equity. This is the value of real estate over and above the liens against it. It's obtained by subtracting the total liens from the value. So basically, it's the difference on what you owe on your mortgage versus what you could sell the property for, basically.
So what you're going to net on the home.
Escrow payment is that portion of a mortgager's monthly payment held in trust by the lender to pay for taxes, hazard insurance, mortgage insurance, lease payments, and other items as they become due.
Yeah. So I think escrow is another term that we get. It gets thrown around different places. So when you open escrow, meaning you've gone under contract, at that point you have what's called an escrow account. So escrow account to me is really just like a savings account that's specific to that property where money gets transferred back and forth.
And managed by not the owner.
Neutral.
Yep, it's a neutral thing. So usually the title company is who is managing that money back and forth. So that's where the earnest money goes, like Maggie said. And then at closing, that's where your funds from the lender, they go into that escrow account, and then once funds are dispersed, once everybody's signed for closing, it comes out of that escrow account. So this escrow payment that Brandie's talking about, this is different than that escrow account. This is an escrow account that your mortgage lender is, they're holding onto funds to be able to pay your taxes and insurance. So every month they're collecting a monthly payment from you, and a portion of that is taxes and insurance. So when they become due one time a year, they're making that payment on your behalf. So that's actually your money in that escrow account. They're just collecting it and paying it for you. So that way you don't have to be responsible for.
And a few years ago, sometimes you would get money back from your lender if you had overpaid into your escrow. And then if they had kind of overestimated what your taxes and insurance needed to be for the year, they would sometimes send you a check back. Now it's more common that they're going to ask you for the difference.
Yeah.
How much values have been going up.
Property values going up. Insurance is going up. Oh my gosh. I try not to be a stickler to my insurance guy, but I'm like, is there anything we can do? Like, insurance just went up crazy, and their deductibles went up from 1% to 1.5%. So everything's going up right now, and I get it, but man, nice if something could go down for a change, not the market, but
exactly.
Okay, the next one is fixed rate mortgage. So this is the other, it's a loan that fixes the interest rate at a prescribed rate for the duration of the loan. So this is pretty much opposite of what we talked about with the adjustable rate. This is you are given a rate when you close on it, and it will not change until the life of the loan. So if you refinance, if you sell the home, unfortunately you can't carry that rate over, but that rate stays with it for the time that you have the loan in place. So that is obviously the more preferred. It's less risky. You know, when people were getting 2% rates, we're like, lock that baby in
for sure.
Fix it.
It's crazy to think that we were in the twos.
Right. The sellers, they sold their house, but they had 2.7% interest.
Oh my gosh.
And now I'm like,
jeez. I'm so glad we bought when we did.
We'll ever see that again.
Yeah.
For sure. And the next one is foreclosure, procedure whereby a property pledges as security for a debt is sold to pay the debt in the event of default. So basically, if a homeowner is behind on their payments, the bank takes over and they're in default. Yeah.
And there's a very set structured rules for each state on how foreclosures can happen. So if you're listing not in Texas, we don't know yours. But in Texas, there's definitely a set number and steps that they have to take in order for them to even be able to sell it out from underneath you, basically.
Right.
All right, so the next one is FSBO, which is FSBO, and that stands for sale by owner, and that is an acronym, as we talked about this morning. So for sale by owner is the brave soul that is choosing to sell their home without an agent. So sometimes that happens, and they are not getting the expertise or the professionalism of an agent representing them. So if you are a buyer and you're working with someone that is selling their property on their own, it kind of is a little more work on the buyer's side, I think, because the buyer's agent ends up kind of managing them a little bit. So it's just, when you're selling on the for sale side without an agent. It's a mess.
That's what it is.
I have something to say, but we'll just keep moving on. Investor, the holder of a mortgage or the permanent lender for whom the mortgage banker services the loan. Any person or institution that invests in mortgages.
Yeah, so an investor can be all sorts of stuff. I think people can say, I'm a real estate investor, and it's like, but are you really? Because, which really, I mean, anybody who buys in real estate, well, I would say anyone who owns real estate, you really are investing in real estate. I mean, I always tell people when they want to go and buy an investment property, and I'm like, you don't even own a home for yourself. I think you should need to invest in yourself first, and then you kind of want to do with the condo.
You can live in it for 2 years, and then after you live in it for 2 years, you keep it as an investment property, and you move on to your next. And there's people who buy it again and again and again. They just move up.
Minimum down payment.
I think the only time where it's like, well, if you're like if you don't own property for yourself, but you're buying like maybe like a duplex, and like you can live on one side and rent out the other, it's like that makes sense to do it all at the same time. But typically I tell people the same thing. Buy for yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Okay, so the next one is lease purchase agreement. This is a buyer makes a deposit for a future purchase of a property with the right to lease the property for the interim. So this is a lease to own option. So this is kind of what Jake's talking about. He kind of is doing. It's a little different. I think you have right of first refusal.
Correct. Yeah.
Instead, so
none of my lease payments are like going towards my purchase price or anything like that, which is like what this would be.
Yep. So you're leasing with the intention to obviously own it, but it's, like you said, not going towards that. But what Jake's doing, it's called right of first refusal. Basically, he has the option to buy it first before anybody else.
Right.
So
there are different companies that do lease to own, to where that company buys the property, and then the buyers, they rent to own it. So they pay rent each month
to that company, and then
eventually transfer it into
and
their
then
name.
purchase, right?
And that, there's obviously like, that sounds like something that's a great option, and it is for certain people. You just keep in mind that company has to make money. So like when they're buying the property and they're renting it to you, like keep in mind that there are fees and charges and built-in profit margins for them. So it's important to keep in mind how that it can be a little bit more of an expensive process.
Yeah, I want to say like most companies that do it, they charge like the purchase price that you purchase it at. Every year that you're leasing it, they increase their value by like at least 5% or something. So you have to purchase it at a higher price by the time you purchase it.
But it's, if that's the only way you can own property, that's a really good way to do it too.
Yeah,
for sure.
It sounds overwhelming and scary, but it's still better to invest in yourself long term versus renting, where you're just going to be thrown out the window.
And that can be, sometimes it can be good for people that maybe have cash, but maybe not are in the best situation with like their credit. Then it makes sense for them, because it's like they can manage the cash flow easier, but they can't get the loan that they need to get. So it's like that is a great option for someone that's like that.
Absolutely.
Yes. So the next one is loan estimate. This is provided by the lender 3 days after completed application. Must contain an estimate cost and credit transaction terms. So it's basically an estimate sent to the buyer, breaking down all of their terms, their numbers, showing what to expect.
And that one's due, like she said, within 3 days of applying for the loan, and then the CD is 3 days of closing on the loan. So your loan estimate and your CD are not necessarily going to match. Typically they don't, because once you get the CD is like about a specific property, so they can actually add in taxes and things like that they are more solid.
For sure.
Yep.
All right, is this one me? Loan to value ratio, the ratio of the mortgage loan principal, which is the amount borrowed, to the property's appraised value or selling price. So on a $100,000 home with a mortgage loan principal of $80,000, the loan to value ratio is 80%, because the loan value is 80% of the sales price. The reason that's kind of important is really when we're talking about PMI or private mortgage insurance, because they want to make sure that that ratio is at a certain threshold before you can get rid of that insurance. So it's an additional fee tacked on to your mortgage unless you put 20% down.
Yep. And the next one is MLS. This is the multiple listing service. This is where we put the listings on and you can run comps on it and everything. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, something you do not get if you for sale by owner. So you need an agent to do that?
So kind of.
Yeah.
So some for sale by owners will go through a kind of a flat rate brokerage,
Right.
and they'll pay like $500 and at least get their house listed on the MLS.
Okay. But they got to work with a realtor to do that, yeah.
But I don't
the
think
flat rate brokerage, so that they
just
pay
do it.
$500.
Right.
The brokerage only lists it. They actually, it'll say like limited service.
Yes,
Right.
limited service
And
listing.
it's like the actual agent who's like at the brokerage that's listed won't do any negotiations, won't answer
Right.
any phone calls, nothing. Like you
Right.
literally will not speak to
But
them.
to get on MLS, they have to,
go through
an agent
an
somehow.
agent type brokerage. It's just usually a
Yeah.
flat fee of
Yeah.
like $500.
And I've seen it where, like, in private remarks, it's like, do not, like, contact the owner.
Yeah.
Which I've
Ugh.
had to do. It's just weird and
Awkward, yeah.
awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
never work out right.
This is also
No.
the only place where the sold values in Texas are listed for properties if it's sold on the market. If it's sold off market, then we won't be able to find it on the MLS. But a majority of properties are sold through the MLS. And since we are a non-disclosure state, sold prices are not public information.
Mhm.
So your agent is the one that can find out the real value of those comps.
How do you guys combat that when someone says, well, I saw it on Zillow and it's the right price? I'm always like,
No.
but they don't have access to that.
That's the
Right.
list
Yeah.
price.
That's
Yeah, and there's already class action lawsuits
Yeah.
against Zillow for like inflating prices
Mhm.
or deflating prices in neighborhoods, buying a lot of
Showing
property
your
and then inflating
estimates.
the
Yeah.
price. Yeah, so
it's so
I always
hard.
send them that.
People
I just find one of those stories, I copy that link and send it to them. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, here's a comparison of what they
Mhm.
how they operate.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my clients, she's like, well, I talked to the owner and I know it's exactly the right price. And Zillow had it. I'm like, I don't know. I
Gosh,
don't know
yeah.
what to tell you.
Yeah.
For sure.
They called Zillow, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is mortgage. So this is a legal document that pledges a property to the lender as security for payment of a debt. So this is basically you're saying that I'm going to take out a loan for this property and make payments on it. So I think this is also called a note. So the note is what gets filed to the deed as
Right.
well to the county with your deed for that promising that you're going to make those payments
For sure.
for that debt.
The next one is mortgage insurance premium, also known as MIP. This is the amount paid by a mortgager for mortgage insurance. The insurance protects the investor from possible loss in the event of a borrower's default on a loan.
Yeah, so this is not the insurance you pay, like homeowner's insurance. This is actually additional insurance that you could pay on the mortgage, like Maggie said, in case you default or you don't make your payments. It insures that mortgage for the mortgage company. So this you do have to pay if you have an FHA loan. You also have to pay it if you put less than 20% down on a conventional. You can actually pay the mortgage insurance premium up front. They'll actually charge you a little bit up front too anyways, and then spread the rest of it out in monthly payments.
Yeah.
So.
All right, mortgager is the borrower of money or the borrower of money or the giver of the mortgage document. So the note is a written promise to pay a certain amount of money. So the mortgager is the person taking out the mortgage, the buyer, basically.
Yeah,
For sure.
Origination fee is our next one, and that is a fee paid to the mortgagee for paying the mortgage before it becomes due, also known as a prepayment fee or reinvestment fee.
Yeah, that sounds good. The next one is option fee. So we talked about earnest money. You also have what's called an option fee. Option fee is that consideration that you put down in order to get an option period. So an option period is that time period that you have from when you go under contract to, let's say it's 5-7 days, again, very negotiable, on how long you have in order to basically say, yes, I'm going to move forward on this house. You can back out of the option period for any reason. So it's kind of your option to buy. So the way I like to explain it is it secures the home so they can't sell it to anybody else. And you really have that option period to say, yes, I'm moving forward on this property.
Right. And if you did back out of the option period, you'd get your earnest money back, but the option fee would go to the seller.
It's consideration for them taking it off the market.
It's an inconvenience for the seller to have to go back.
And not all states have an option fee.
Which
also. So if you're in a different state, ask your realtor, because I know that some states that I've worked with, they don't have option
Yeah.
periods or option fees. So
There are some states where they can back out of the contract up until until closing day.
That would
for any reason.
freak
That would
me
be-
out.
That's 30 days of
What states do you know?
I'm pretty sure like up northeast, I forget.
That
I
is
think it's
wild.
like North Carolina they can do that. I don't know.
They're doing surveys and
I
meets
remember
and bounds
talking
too.
to-
Yeah. Oh gosh, have y'all ever done a meets and bounds?
I know you have.
Such a
Yeah.
mess.
How funny.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one is sorry,
Oh,
this
is
is you.
that me?
Yeah.
Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. This is the sum components of a mortgage payment. So
Yeah.
all of the fees wrapped into one.
So a lot of people hear this as the PITI.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's your mortgage payment that you make every month.
Yeah, I think a lot of people here don't realize that it's like it's not just your mortgage payment
Right.
and interest. It also they take your lender takes interest taxes and insurance
Yeah.
as well. That's to put them in that escrow account that we talked about earlier.
That's why you need to be really careful when you're looking at mortgage calculators
Yeah.
online. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, the monthly payment's like $1,000," and you're like, "Yeah, that's your mortgage. That's your
the principal and interest.
principal and
only.
interest. That doesn't include your taxes
Right.
and insurance."
Yeah. Even
Which
on
are
the close-
sizable.
On the closing disclosure, it'll be broken up into 2 parts, and people will get confused on that.
Yeah.
Why they have 2 different payments? Yeah.
All right, the next one, realtor, not realtor.
I was about to say, should we go over pronunciation?
Oh my gosh.
Realtor, not
Yes.
realtor.
Yeah.
Everyone, it's so frustrating, especially it's the older generation. So
Well-
they call you a realtor. I'm like, I'm
Or
a what?
if
I'm
they're real
a
southern realtor.
No, I
Really?
hear people like newer agents saying
Saying
it
it.
still
Yeah.
too.
Newer
Yeah.
agents?
Yes.
They went over this for like
The
25
I feel
first
like
thing
the
I learned in
class-
real
I
estate
was
school
gonna say-
was this
Yes.
pronunciation.
Yeah,
Realtor.
she
Literally
literally
first
the,
class.
the instructor literally wrote realtor on
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
It's realtor. It's not realtor.
Yes.
Do you see an A in between? And I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I said it
Yeah.
all wrong.
I remember.
No.
I'll never forget that part of the class.
Yeah,
too.
it was
Yeah.
like the very
Did you
beginning.
guys also know, because we're going to say this, they actually don't like being called NAR and TAR and
Oh, really?
What?
They,
Yeah.
they
They don't like that.
they don't like it, so it's NAR. They don't like
Yeah.
being called NAR and TAR. Someone
I
else
can
We
told
see
call
me
it
it.
track.
Well, yeah, but that's
they're okay with track.
No, I know. It's like you choose one, but not the other.
well because
two.
TREC is like a much more of a mouthful, I think, than NAR.
Well, isn't it TXR now?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so a realtor is a member of the local and state real estate boards, which are affiliated with the National Association of Realtors, better known as NAR. Yes. So all of us are members of our local county board for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that is CCAR, not CACAR.
Yeah.
I've always called that one CCAR.
Same.
Yeah.
It's
So that's
easy.
Collin County, which that's just like where our licenses are held, but obviously we can work all over
Like
DFW.
locally,
Mhm.
So we
Really all
are,
over Texas.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to join another board. But so like that really then gets us access to our MLS, and then your
Mhm.
MLS is this set area where you can
Yeah.
sell in because you're a member of that MLS.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
our county one then feeds into the state one, which then feeds into the national
Yeah.
one.
So fun fact, not all real estate agents or people with their real estate license are realtors. So realtors, we, like Jake said, we are a part of the NAR, National Association of Realtors. So we actually have a code of ethics that we have to follow. We are held to a higher standard, that kind of thing. So there's more education that a realtor and ethics that we follow. Not all real estate agents are that way.
I think here, if you're not
Most
a realtor,
are.
then you can't get the MLS
Yes.
because the access to MLS is to
Exactly.
your local board.
Yeah. So most likely you are working with a realtor, but just know that not everybody has
if
it.
you don't see it on their email
If they
signature
don't have
line.
MLS
Yeah.
access, because sometimes there's non-MLS agents, you know how we
Uh-huh.
have that in there. There are people that don't
Right.
have access to the MLS, so they'll call and ask for the
Yeah.
sheet,
Or
and you're like, why? Because they don't have access, so they're not
Yeah.
actually a realtor.
Can you imagine not having access?
Well, so I mean, sometimes it's like if I have family that's in Austin and they like want me to still represent them on the
Yeah.
cell. I mean, yes, our office could technically join the Austin MLS that I have access, or I could kind of like she said, just kind of like work it as and like I obviously know all
Yeah.
the Texas
That
laws.
is true.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's not very common. And it's like even if I had like a really close friend that wants me to represent them in another city, like they would have to know like I don't know that city's
Right.
everything about it like I do like Dallas I know the back of my hand. So but there are those times where it's like maybe it's just because there's still an agent in the state, and I actually have had that to where
Yeah.
it's been someone that they were an agent in Houston but they were representing a family member up here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is survey. This is the process in which a parcel of land is measured and its area ascertained.
This shows all your boundary lines, fence lines, all of that.
Yep.
And also shows, like in ours, we can't build 15 feet
building
max.
lines.
So yeah, it'll show like the building lines. It'll show the easements.
We talked about earlier. Yeah.
Yep. And the important thing for this is when you are selling your home, if you purchased it and you already had that survey from when you purchased, it's really important the title company has to have that survey. Then let's say that you added a pool. When you go to sell your home, the title company is going to ask for your existing survey. If you've made any changes, you have to sign an affidavit saying whether or not you have. So it's really important that you make those changes, because if it gets caught not in time, that can really mess up the transaction. So
yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And the final one is title insurance. So this is an insurance policy which protects the insured, and the insured is going to be the purchaser or lender against loss arising from defects in the title. So basically the title company is going to issue you title insurance. Basically they're ensuring that anything that they find, from the day that you are closing to the property all the way back, and we found out from Laura that this can go all the way back to the Louisiana purchase, that they're ensuring that that there's no hidden person that's going to pop up saying that they're actually the owners of this property. So they're ensuring both you, the purchaser, and they're also going to insure the lender. So there's lender insurance also in that title insurance.
Which sometimes people hear this and the same thing, they think, well, like, I'm already paying home insurance, so people get confused with that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people think, like, I've even heard agents say, like, well, it's a scam. And I'm like, I've actually seen it in action to where they have caught things where it's like, oh, if we have sold the property, there was a missing heir that no one knew about that could have come and claimed part of the property, basically. So it's not a scam.
Yeah.
They really do go through and check to make sure that, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and that the new owner is going to be the only owner possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially, the title company wants to do that research, because if they do come back, years down the road, and someone finds out that they, didn't clear title all the way, then they're the ones that are in a lawsuit. So
and unlike home insurance, which you pay monthly, this is a one-time fee, and it covers you forever while you own the home. So I think that's important to know too. Is that it's really not that much, and to make sure that you're the sole owner of the property.
Exactly. Yep.
Did y'all see the story that I posted where the lady got like 85 lots or something like that?
Yeah.
So the title company, like, just like with a little miss typo or something like that, the woman, when she bought her property from the builder, she actually bought 85 lots with it on accident.
With that one price?
With that one, it was like $596,000 or something like that. She had 85 lots. So
what did she do?
They're having to go back. So they actually closed with it. And so now the title company is having to go back and clear. Yeah. She's like, because she would have to pay taxes on them too.
Oh,
so it's like, I wouldn't want to own anything. So she's like, please get these off my name. So, so the title company is having to go back and work through to clear title on all those properties, because if someone else bought that lot, she's technically the owner. So it's like, it'd be madness.
But it's luckily now title's the one who has to do that.
Yeah.
Good thing she got some title insurance.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, y'all. Those are the ABCs of real estate. Tune in the rest of this month with school starting. We're actually going to do a back to school theme for the rest of August. So tune in next week for that episode.
Yep.
We'll see you guys then.
All right,
Bye.